in that regard. So how else can we provide a mechanism, invent a mechanism that might just start taking the new world forward? And in all of this, I would say that as certain pillars fall over, which we're seeing, then my resolve and the resolve of our membership is that TSI and all of its component parts, the Association of Trading Standards Officers, Society of Trading Standards Officers in Scotland, the Welsh Heads of Trading Standards, our private sector business group and others, that we together sustain, hold our nerve and indeed provide some of the continuity and transitional machinery that's going to be required over these coming months. So our strategies are built around a whole range of new relationships, driven, and I think this has been a good thing from the consultation. It has driven new relationships with a new sense of purpose and focus in that arena. But again, some of the worries that we will have in terms of those relationships. That last bullet point was my quote, really, which indeed Lord Borry has used in the House of Lords debate, where I did say, this is a significant leap of faith from central government to local government. That's obvious, but I just hope it isn't a leap in the dark. And by that I mean that we are learning as we go along, and that is something that you probably all feel now. I've challenged anyone to suggest, even our biz colleagues, to suggest that they're in possession of all the knowledge and facts that are going to be required to make this new world work. And it doesn't help when that landscape is changing before our very eyes. So as we're trying to build on the platform, the foundations that we need, then those foundations themselves are changing rapidly. And in that context, we have some real worries about just how that new world will work. Mitchell, you talked about energy selling, utilities. We're incredibly worried in the trading standards community about energy selling. We as an institute have been in the forefront of calling for a complete ban on the doorstep selling of energy. I, for one, in a modern world, a modern UK, for one moment can't understand why people have to knock on doors to sell energy. And I wouldn't mind if it was competitive, but that's another issue. So we don't think there's any place for that. I think Consumer Focus have actually come around to possibly acknowledging that we may have a point, as of Ofgem. And of course, we want in this new world to work with those that have the necessary persuasive power, might, responsibility, statutory authority to help ensure that that markets are properly regulated in that way. So the powers that Consumer Focus have, we obviously want to see sustained, and I know that's a challenge not only for Citizens Advice, but for biz and for all of us in ensuring that, that the new world does not put consumers at any greater risk in that regard. So the reform of public bodies is absolutely with us. And Mitchell, I know my time is getting on, so I will need to close in a moment. Let me just touch a bit upon this, if I may. It's not only a reform in the world of the Office of Fair Trading, Consumer Focus, Citizens Advice, Trading Standards, and all those organisations that sit with us in this. It's a reform of culture. It's a reform in the way in which we do things, driven by other parts of government, driven by CSR funding, of course, but driven by what's behind that in terms of how public services will be delivered in the future. And back to my earlier point about adaptability. I don't see a world where we can assume that the public services that form trading standards in terms of its public service delivery can be sustained in the same way as they were before. I see my colleague Reg Ruffles at the back, and I'm delighted to see Reg, because Reg hasn't been well and he's now back to full form, and well done, Reg. And his colleague from Suffolk. But Suffolk, of course, are one of those authorities that are looking at new ways in which they can deliver services. They want to use their local communities in a much greater way, and they're looking very much driven by their new chief executive to see how services may be delivered. And I'm sure that will have some impact upon trading standards in Suffolk, hopefully for the good, but nonetheless it is there. The local government itself, Local Government Association itself, has said in its delivery of 800 vital services at a cost of £120 billion, by 2014 it will have a £20 billion a year shortfall in funding. £20 billion a year shortfall in funding on the basis of its current service deliveries. That clearly isn't sustainable in the world that we're entering into. And government is increasingly challenging local government and other public service arenas to say, okay, what are you going to do about it in terms of future delivery? And here we are, we're going to give you a few tools and ideas. And I think it's those that we still don't really understand. The idea of mutuals, for example. So how do we see mutuals working in the context of trading standards and other regulatory service deliveries in the future? Answer, don't know, but we better find out soon, because we need to understand that if we're going to ourselves lead rather than be led in the context of local government and other public service delivery. The same will be said for commissioned private services and others in that regard. There's no doubt, and some authorities are already being criticised. Barnet in London, for example, being criticised for already announcing its private commissioning of services. But actually that's nothing new. If you're in building control, your service has been out to private sector for years now. Yes, there might be some pockets sustained in local authorities, but there are at least 12 approved inspectors in building control that have been delivering private inspection for years. Now we can argue about where the boundaries are, but the fact is we are well and truly on that road. I sometimes get told off by some of my colleagues for daring to mention the whole issue of commissioned services, mutuals and otherwise. But I think that's the price of leadership, and that's the price of responsibility, not on me, but on the Trading Standards Institute, if it's to be respected and considered by all parties, and not only those in its membership.